It's still kind of early on a Sunday.
Sunday.
It's amazing that that's my urge too. When I hear the word Sunday, it's to get fired up for like WWF or
I think
WWE.
you think that's a totally generational thing?
Sunday.
Without TV and the shitty local stations running ads for monster truck rallies, you don't experience those ads. Sunday. See Gravedigger and Bigfoot. See the car crusher.
So good. What was the Godzilla one that would like eat the other cars? And
Yeah, that was
fire
like the
at
car
its
crusher thing.
Have you ever gone to a monster truck rally?
I have not. I bet they're awesome.
I went to one. I don't
Yeah?
remember very well though. It was cool though. It was like demolition
I
derby
assume
and
I didn't. Sports robbed me a lot of those things. I think we didn't. It was like if it was a Sunday activity and you had to be on your feet too much, we would tend not to do it.
you had responsibilities
Fuck
to
responsibilities.
others. I only had responsibilities to myself.
Oh, I blew it. I already cursed. I said a curse word, which is a funny term in itself. A curse word. Curse be upon you for using that word.
You're cursing all of us, me especially. I don't need that kind of baggage.
They don't know what I know.
Hey, welcome back to the Engineering Podcast. I'm Adam.
I'm Brian.
We're here to talk about stuff. I feel like I always kind of do that nebulous intro, but it's perfect today because we sat down for our little intro. Like, what are we going to talk about today? And we were kind of like, what do we talk about? Like, it's just like, what are we? It turned into a really
Very existential.
right. It got real existential real fast today. So we kind of decided to roll with it. I thought you said it really well. In terms of, the podcast and why it works between us as a good sort of.
Yeah. Well, our intention was kind of to do a hit list topic today, a hit list episode, and we kind of have that outlined. But the topic is
What would you say you do here,
things,
Brian?
We want to talk about stuff that makes us uncomfortable today. And this is why, and this answers your question that you just kind of threw out. We were talking about why we enjoy doing the podcast and why we enjoy conversation with each other and kind of what drove us to want to share our conversations. And we realized it's because we're both kind of jerks on certain things. Jokingly, we you're a jerk, man, but you're also a jerk for the same reasons. And it allows us to talk about stuff that other people get upset with us about sometimes when we talk about. And so we can be like brash. Is that a word? Brash with each other, brash with the topics. And we can throw out stuff in like a loose way where we both yeah, I know what you're talking about. You're not this like horrible person for saying that, but now let's talk about why that topic exists, why it makes you uncomfortable. And I get to go places talking with you that I don't get to go with very many other people.
Well, and it's because the brash, and it's because and so like if we had to title this topic, right? It was uncomfy topics.
Topics we're uncomfy with.
But I would have called it something like the value of uncomfortable conversation.
Sounds cute.
Or like maintaining uncomfortable conversation, right? And the reason I'm inclined to put maintaining in there is because when you say brash, like I think the thing that doesn't happen for us, mostly just because we've known each other for so long and been through way stupider than could ever come up in a single conversation. Like the brash piece or the part that like the piece of what someone has to say that might be like when you say brash, you mean more like unconventional or
I'm not sure what the word means. It just felt right.
It's like, yeah, no, I mean, you're right though, because brash is the thing. It's like
a
you're going to
harsh
say the thing
representation.
that people don't usually say. Like somebody who's outspoken says stuff that the other people are not necessarily as inclined socially to say. But you can't have conversations about those things unless you push through that piece. And you can't have and the reason you can't have conversations is because people back away from certain topics that are uncomfortable. And so the conversation stops.
Right. And
so
a lot of
for
people,
us-
I think, use fake outrage to get out of those conversations.
Yeah,
well.
that's a completely
actually was a-
different
yeah.
sort of. That was a whole topic we talked about in terms of Alzheimer's and everything.
Well, yeah, with
But,
you, I
like-
meant brash. Like, I can just quickly, without tiptoeing around a topic, I can say something like rude or inappropriate to kind of fire you up a little bit to get you on a topic. And I don't have to feel like I'm a jerk for doing it.
Right. And I think the reason you feel like a jerk is because if you did it with someone with which you were less comfortable, they would go, "Oh,"
They judge you.
and then you wouldn't
Be like,
get.
"Oh, you're a jerk."
Well, but also
You're
you
like,
wouldn't
really
get
a
to
jerk.
have the conversation that you want to have, so it wouldn't be a good podcast. Because
Right.
if your partner on a podcast constantly goes, "Oh, we don't talk about that," like then you're not gonna.
Which
That's
we
gonna be
find
a
ourselves
great
doing.
conversation. That would just be a list of topics that I want to talk about and you won't talk about, or the other
And
way
that
around.
happens to us. And we don't even put those things on our list, but that comes up a lot. And that was like the motivation here is these topics. I think often when we're talking about what are we going to talk about next, we're like, we get to a place where we're like, ooh, I'm not comfortable with my parents hearing that, or my girlfriend hearing that, or my friends hearing that, or my like ethnic friend hearing that. And that's silly. So we either need to rectify those things and not think those awful things, or we need to realize that there's value in those things and talk about them publicly. Publicly.
What do you mean awful thing?
Publicly.
Right? Like I think
Well, not always. Awful is maybe an overstatement of the topics that we usually bring up, but there are things that make us uncomfortable that we don't want to publicly be on record talking about sometimes.
controversial.
Controversial, potentially.
Right.
We're building some buzz here, some real
and the
anticipation. What
struggle-
are they going to talk about today that's so awful?
And I think this gets us back to the thing we were talking about with when we were talking about outrage on the internet, right? Like the topics around which there is the most outrage are the most important most of the time to
Totally.
talk about if we're going to have, world peace.
Yeah.
Right. And so when that level of when those topics are so uncomfy to discuss, like how can you ever come to some sort of consensus if you can't even get the first word out
Right.
without a 100% shutdown?
Right. So I think what we've done today is a big step forward in taking our own conversations to a place where we're okay publicly talking about them more with other people. So we're gonna dive into some really edgy topics today that make us uncomfortable, that we almost skipped over.
Well, I think it's more, yeah, but it's more just like generally an exploration of like what, why do we feel the need to even do this?
Right.
And for me, I think I heard, I think it was like Russell Brand that was talking about this recently, who was talking about how he was like, you're almost doing the world a disservice if you have the ability to be articulate and the comfort to discuss things that other people don't want to discuss.
Yeah.
Like you're doing the world a disservice if you don't try to talk about it.
Yeah.
And
think
so
he's right.
I feel like that's like
Totally agree
why
with
we
that.
feel like we need to do this. But then the hard part is, and we got to talking about this, and this is one of those moments where you're like, no, save it for the podcast. Like after we do this, when we do it with regularity, like the thing I end up trying to carry forward is these are the conversations that I want to have. And I try to have them with the people around me. And if you can't stand to be around me because I want to talk about things that are uncomfortable and we can't push through that barrier to get to actual substance behind all that stuff, then I'm okay with you not liking me.
Yeah.
And I guess that makes me a jerk to some people, but I don't feel like it should, as long as I don't feel like it should. And I don't feel like it should because you should try to have that conversation. And if we keep having that conversation and by the end of it, you're just like, oh man, he is just racist. Then
That's okay.
try to tell me why I'm racist.
Yeah.
And if then I can't fix it or don't even try to fix it, then you can assess me as a jerk.
Yeah, if someone
But,
comes across as a jerk, your response should be, "Oh, let me discuss this with you and see if I can help you see my perspective," which I don't think is as jerky.
But if I'm just a jerk because I brought up a thing that made you uncomfortable, like that's not how we solve any of the problems that we're
Right.
having right now.
Yep.
And I feel like the reason I want to talk about this is just sort of like to find more people that feel the same way and will have that conversation, but also just to have the conversation regularly. But I think like part of why we end up talking about this in the context of the podcast for ourselves is because we're trying to make peace with the fact that people might not like us.
That's totally what we're doing here, and we need to push past that because that's part of our professional podolistic journalistic. That didn't work. Our professional persona here with I want to push places that help me grow. That's the point of this.
Right.
You know, this isn't like making us money right now. This isn't a job. This is something we're doing for fun because we enjoy talking to each other and because I think there's like tremendous growth opportunity here. And I've felt it big time in like 9 months of doing this with you. My ability to articulate myself publicly. I know this isn't totally public, but it's like a public mindset. You're in a public mindset while you're doing
you're
it.
talking with the idea that someone else is going to listen to it and you want them to understand. Right. So it's still practice at oration.
And so I think in looking at our topics recently, I've kind of been like, these are hum-ho, uninteresting. I think we kick this off with a lot of topics that we talk about all the time that really fire us up, that are like, we just know a lot about them and it was easy for us to hit them. And now we're kind of hitting a point where like, well, what is the point of our podcast? What are we going to talk about for hundreds of episodes, you know, until we're like old grizzly men? And so we got to start hitting stuff that's uncomfortable for us. It makes our listeners go, ooh, what are they going to talk about today? Oh, should I turn it off? My kids are in the car.
Yeah. So I guess what you're saying is strap in.
Get ready.
It's going to get weird.
It's going to get real raunchy. So our first topic, and you may have noticed this because we've been speaking so politely this whole time, except for once when Kerpelman let slip. We are going to discuss...
That might have been before the intro.
Oh, it might have been while we were practicing.
Since we started the podcast, I've actively tried to... I put on like my parents' filter.
Profanity. Dun, dun, dun.
Which I don't think is that uncomfortable, but it is an example of a thing that makes people uncomfortable, right? So the topic of talking about profanity is not uncomfortable, but profanity makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, profanity makes people think you're a jerk sometimes. I've noticed we've had a couple people point out that there's a lot of profanity in our podcast, which I then have paid attention to, and there's a lot. I use bad words a ton in our podcast. And then I realized, I just cuss a lot when I'm talking with Kerpelman. I'm really passionate about the stuff I'm talking about. I'm not using it like aggressively or mean. If I am, it's in like a joking context. And, but I use it a lot. And then we get into the concept of like, well, wait, why don't I do that all the time? Because I very rarely, I wouldn't say rarely. I use profanity quite a bit, but I don't use it nearly as much as I do when I'm just talking with you.
Well, and then you said, so let's try. So we have thus far on the podcast tried to...
and tried very successfully.
Tried to avoid profanity. And I said, that'll be easy. And you said, I don't know. And I was like, no, it's the parents filter. Like you grew up with it because you would swear around your friends and then not swear around certain people, teachers, parents, whatever. Like you grow up in culture where you have to talk to people and you develop you should, I think, develop an ability to turn that on or off.
Yeah. It's well, my question
it's weird
was
that you have to.
It's super weird that you have to, first of all. And then my question when we kicked this off was, well, I think I do that subconsciously. I'm not like purposefully like rolling into a business meeting thinking, I'm going to switch the profanity switch off. I roll in and I'm just naturally in the don't cuss in this environment. I don't even think about it. And then when I'm hanging out with friends, it's like I can roll and lay out bad words and they're like funny or they're appropriate or they're emphasis. And so I was curious coming into the podcast in a situation where I'm mentally in the space of talk however I naturally want to talk, which is kind of the point, what it would do to my brain. And I've noticed both I'm fixated on it, so I'm thinking about it with like every word and it's very distracting. I don't know long term if we continue to talk, if it would continue to be a problem, but I think I'm like consciously filtering on the way out. Right. And I have almost slipped up a couple times. You said
jerk instead of a-hole.
Right.
But here's a perfect example.
Careful.
I know, but
ding, ding, ding. I'm getting a whistle.
No, but it's a perfect segue because a-hole is generally okay, even though I'm literally pulling letters from the word I'm trying not to say. Like, it's like people on Instagram that put up F asterisk CK.
Right? Is
You're
that
not
okay?
even, apparently.
That comes over my like business chat
Like,
sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like,
and
wait,
so,
did we just waste 10 seconds to type in asterisk to not say a bad word?
You wasted a keystroke. That's like an extra keystroke.
You hit shift. That's called carpal tunnel.
To say a bad word in a socially acceptable way, right? Like, and so it's funny because I think the reason you develop the filter, if you work in business or, I don't know, went to a school like we did where you had literally priests that would tell you not to say those things.
No profanity. None.
Like to me, it's just like you don't, in a business context, you don't want to take a chance at offending anyone in the room because there's no stakes around that piece of like, I need to say the F word. Like,
I don't think it's offending. I think it's you don't want to look bad and you know that someone else thinks that a cuss word is a sign of you being like trashy or unintelligent or not thoughtful in a situation where you should be presenting yourself in a certain way. And I don't necessarily want to go
etiquette question.
I think it's an etiquette thing. I think
a fine breeding question,
and it's entirely a personal thing. If profanity was just offending other people, I don't think it would be nearly as big a deal. But it's the offending the person is them then responding and saying you're a jerk, and I don't want to be around you, and maybe you shouldn't be in this meeting. You're fired.
Then is it just the social construct that's implemented in order to try to feel out without actually bringing them up what the uncomfortable topics are?
Kind of.
Because I was trying to think like, when you were saying that, I thought, okay, well, I feel more comfortable. Like if I'm in a boardroom and someone of authority swears,
it's great.
I immediately feel more comfortable in that room.
Some people might not though.
And some people might not. But I think that's a reflection of, oh, this guy just became a wild card because if he's willing to say the F word in his board meeting, he might try to talk about abortion. Like you see what I'm saying? Like, is it a way of metering through linguistics how, like,
where
how
a person stands?
Right. Gauge somebody's comfort with the norm of uncomfy topics. Like this becomes a guy who might bring up an uncomfy topic, and then you're going to have to feel uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a bunch of things.
For?
I think you see the same progression in what I just mentioned. I didn't realize it at the time, but like someone who texts you or sends you an IM or something, and they mark that out, they could be just testing the waters to see how you respond. And then if you respond next time and you put in like a friendly fogged out cuss word, then maybe the third time you guys communicate, someone slips in the full word, maybe the S word. And you're like, whoa, did they just say the S letter T word? And you're like, whoa, I should say that next time. And you progress and you bond and become friends. And then you cuss constantly like you and I do.
So maybe that's, so maybe in that context, it's valuable and we should continue to let it exist? Or
it just lets you classify the person, the personality.
There was a study, there was a thing going around, some sort of study, the details of which I don't really know, so who knows how reliable it is. But it was passed through, it was discussed.
Your memory or the study?
Both. But it was definitely discussed on what I consider to be reliable publications. And it showed that people who use profanity frequently have a higher IQ.
Oh, I buy it.
than people who don't.
Heck yeah.
And and so my answer to that was just, well, maybe that's a representation of the fact that they're able to realize that it's not actually of material importance. Like it's just, and this is sort of, I guess, almost philosophical, but like it's just a set of letters that represent an idea. And so if you say to F someone or to have sex with someone,
careful,
They both.
Careful.
I'm being careful.
Don't make me break out this whistle.
I've not yet said anything that I couldn't say on morning talk
yeah,
radio.
we're not. We'll know later. We'll edit whistles in.
But they, as verbs, they are the same thing, right? Like one has a shade of meaning that we have decided is offensive in social context.
Yeah.
But like in another country, might not be at all.
Yeah. It's entirely it's a situation where we present something to young people as a black and white situation, and we say, you shall not use these words. And then we list a bunch of reasons. They make you look like an idiot. They're inappropriate. They'll make people uncomfortable. You don't need them. Use more creative words. And then we become adults and we're like, that's total BS. You know, you told us a bunch of stuff that you didn't really describe the situation to us. You didn't treat us as intelligent, growing individuals. You just told us some nonsense. And now we're stuck with adults where there's this whole spectrum of use cases for a whole series of words that allow you to express yourself. And a lot of the time, they shouldn't be said. People who are wandering around the street yelling profanity at other people to make them uncomfortable, that's kind of an inappropriate use. I don't necessarily want people yelling bad words at me while I'm standing at the bus stop. But in context of a conversation where I'm excited about something or I'm trying to emphasize a story, totally appropriate,
Well, it's like other things we've talked about, I think, on the podcast, but like starting a sentence with but, like it's a tool you can use just because they were always told you don't start a sentence with but. Like
I remember that day in class.
Hemingway used to do it all the time. Yeah, bring it up all the time.
Hemingway did it.
Right. It's like
I still do it. I just did it yesterday in a story. I was like, should I do it here or should I do like a blah, 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 comma, but, comma,
and
blah,
you were
blah, blah,
aware
blah.
of it, which made it a tool to be used. And so maybe that's where that intelligence piece in the study comes from, which is like, I don't just curse at people walking down the street, but it comes up in conversation when I'm deliberately trying to put punch at the beginning of whatever I'm trying to say. And the F word is particularly good for that because in terms of onomatopoeia, it like it makes that, noise.
Whoa.
Right?
Was that, do I need to blow this?
You're actually holding a whistle? Oh,
blow
no.
What? Blow what, they say.
That's terrible.
Okay, so here's a question for you, and this is going to blow your mind because of how many things are tied together. So, oh no, wait, I might have just forgotten it. Shoot. Well, I got the general point. I had a better intro for it. So if we let, oh no, I know what it was. So if we let profanity become a normal part of conversation, if there isn't this preached non-usage of the words,
indoctrinated,
we lose the ability to use it for emphasis. So all of a sudden, its value in our lexicon is now diminished to the point where we can't use it anymore and we don't have those words. And this then kind of makes us the selfish people who are using something they're not supposed to their own benefit, where if
we're
everyone
consuming
used it,
a resource.
yes. And this my mind-blowing piece is a topic that's too uncomfortable for us to get into right now, but I'm going to touch on it, which is vaccinations and the concept of not needing to give them to your kids right now because you're probably not going to get sick, but that's fucking no whistleblower.
Oh.
I was so excited. Damn it. And I was focused on the topic.
But it's an example, right? Because in a context where you're trying to proceed tactfully, like you introduce that as a topic that is so uncomfortable that you're not ready to talk about it.
Right.
And if you go back to the last piece talking about why the value of pushing through this is like, it's not a thing that people talk about because I feel uncomfortable every time I touch on vaccinations on Facebook or whatever. But it's a really, really important thing because one day I'm going to have kids and they're going to go to school with the other kids. And I don't want them to end up like my grandfather with no muscle in their right arm because they got polio as a kid. Like, it's a really, really, really important thing to talk.
I can't believe I broke first.
It speaks to the importance of that. I told you I'm rock solid on this.
BS. You're a jerk, and I'm going to prove it. Cuss at me, you jerk. Look at your stupid cup with a dumb boat on it.
Does it have a boat on it? It does have a boat on it.
What kind of stupid boat does it have?
Put a bird on it. It's a tall ship. It's the
Let's move on to our next topic.
But
I think
so-
we've really
so
crushed
but it,
profanity.
back to the thing of like a resource to be consumed.
Yeah.
I think maybe the thing we're cruising toward here is like if someone swears a lot in inappropriate context, then I carry that baggage too of feeling like, oh, that's a trashy person.
Yeah.
But I don't know what to make of that because then I swear all the time and I don't think of myself as trashy. So
I'm almost certain I'm not a trashy
So
person.
what do you make
But
of
I
that,
cuss
right?
a lot.
but
Maybe
then
I
when
am a trashy
listeners
person.
when listeners say to us,
Sigh.
like you to bring it full circle, you said, when listeners mention to us that we swear a lot
Yeah.
and that's why they don't listen. Like, what's that about?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, you specifically mentioned your mother. Does she not want to think of you as trashy? Or does it just create a visceral discomfort and so it's an unenjoyable experience, so she shies away
Yeah.
from it?
I think it just makes her uncomfortable. She also doesn't listen because she doesn't listen to podcasts. But
Well, that's a completely
that was
different
her- that was
conversation
her-
on podcast demographics.
her like major feedback was, boy, you sure cuss a lot. You should do that less.
Well, and I mean, it's funny as a generational piece because I was talking to my wife the other day about tattoos, and I feel like everyone our age that has a tattoo thinks nothing of the other people their age's tattoos, but we all have the exact same story of our parents going,
Oh yeah.
"Oh, you idiot," or more extremely, "I'm going to disown you and hang up the
I
phone."
think every generation in history across every culture has that experience with tattoos.
And
It's a very funny thing.
it's an interesting thing
good
because I
topic.
mean, you got to lend credence to it because for their generation, tattoos were mostly for bikers and prisoners.
Yeah, fair.
Anyway,
Cool. I don't feel as uncomfortable as I thought I was going to feel.
talking
How do
about
you?
profanity. Well,
Yeah.
profanity's not so bad.
What are all the words that you're
about,
not supposed to say, by the way?
I would just instruct our users to Google George Carlin's 7 dirty words.
think you're
seven
so-
words you can't say on
So
television.
F-word smart, don't you?
Patton Oswalt
You
has a
think
pretty
you're
good
so
bit about
great.
it too.
I think you're so better than me.
You're just trying to get me to say the words.
We'll see.
I know what's happening here.
We'll see what happens.
This kicks back to our podcast last week. I've spent so much time doing debates, so much time talking about weird, touchy things in philosophy. Like, the second you said that, I started preparing a response that would not contain a bad word because I knew you were trying to get me to say a bad word. Like,
I'm just fascinated with the mental space because I have absolutely no problem not cussing in
Right.
front of real people. And I actually have a story that I think is interesting that was like a pivotal moment in my life, actually. I'll never forget it. I had been working my first professional career job at a big company for 3 years, and I had given my notice. I was leaving. I was going back to school, and I was working as an engineer. I was hanging out in the machine shop with like 25 guys, like maintenance guys and machinists and other engineers, and we're chatting about stuff, and I dropped a profane word, and the entire shop went ape S. And they started, whoa, Jones just said S. Everyone's like high-fiving me. And I was like, what the F is going on? I have been so far removed from my own human personality for 3 effing years that I haven't been able to use the S word one time in front of these people that I'm like good friends with and have been working with for 3 effing years. It was so eye-opening for me. I was almost in tears because I was so upset with this like burden that had been put on my personality. I couldn't be myself. It was horrible, and it was a great sign. I was like, I have made the right decision to move on, or at least grow up and get over that and be myself more often.
Right. Well, that kind of, I guess, comes back to the podcast message or why to do this for us, right? Which is sort of like to push through that concern. It's like, yes, there's a space where if I'm dealing with a client, like there's no reason to, for one, I should just never need to speak with that emphasis. Like we're not talking about anything that's actually of great enough importance.
Wouldn't that be great, though? What if that
But-
were every conversation you had with other humans?
Yeah,
I would
I
love
can't believe-
socializing.
I believe politicians don't swear more often.
that's what happens when people get drunk and then they kind of forget that they had those conversations.
Right.
And that's why alcohol is so popular, is because it lets people have conversations with that level of excitement and truth behind them. That's a different topic. We should talk about alcohol. That's a great one.
Topic.
We
Put
should
it on
talk
the
about-
list.
We should talk
But
about
we can't
a
miss our
couple of
last
things.
topic for today. It's so important.
This is so uncomfortable. Are you sure we should go there?
The note says, "Sexy Han
Sexy
Solo."
Han Solo. Try it again. 1, 2, 3. Sexy Han Solo.
Is that better?
I don't know. Both are probably hard to hear.
Yeah.
Sexy Han Solo. What are your thoughts? How do you feel about Sexy Han Solo? What does Sexy Han Solo mean to you?
Well, the reason I put it on there was somewhere on the internet I encountered, like a themed erotic image of not male
Somewhere on
Han
the
Solo.
internet.
It was a female wearing a Han Solo outfit. Like, I wouldn't even call it cosplay. It was the effort to appear to be Han Solo was minimal relative to the effort to draw my attention by being sexy. And I almost said the F
kinda like
word
a
just
Halloween.
then.
Oh, damn. I wasn't even paying attention to it because I was thinking about Sexy Han Solo.
I was going to say sexy
This
as F.
cast is difficult so far. Oh, man. It would have triggered. I would have blown the whistle if I had heard the word. So this was like a Halloween costume,
Sexy
like by
AF.
Sexy Han Solo. Sexy AF. It's fun that everyone knows what all these letters mean.
Right? And
It's
so
not
that's-
as
So we're
exciting
back
to
to the
say them.
philosophical thing because it creates the same thing in your head, but it's okay. So
It did
why,
it for me a few minutes ago when I was really throwing them out during that
feel like
story.
I feel like it lets us say the same thing, but reserves the use of the actual word for the point where you're really trying to make a point. So maybe
Yeah.
it's better that we have those obnoxious,
Yeah.
placeholders.
It'd be really interesting to analyze our podcasts. This is way too complex and we'll never do it, but we'll talk about it for a second. Analyze our podcasts and see at like what frequency we use profanity, around what other words, what's like the volume level change. See if there's like, because I was really fired up a minute ago when I was throwing out F's and S's and A's and S's and
I feel like it's probably the same for me.
and
And then the context where it
BSs.
almost just came up because to say sexy AF was just sort of clever.
it was
It's good.
appropriate.
It's good radio.
So
Either way, I put this on the list because
why does this one make us uncomfortable? I don't feel uncomfortable yet.
It's uncomfortable because we end up talking about sex.
Oh, and sexuality and the
sexuality.
standards between male and female. Oh, I remember
Right.
on other
Which is-
yeah.
which
There's
is
a lot of
sort
reasons
of
why
what I
this
was
one's
talking about before. But that's why it ended up on the uncomfortable list. But before that, it was more just like the Han Solo-ness of you. So I keep looking over here because you Googled sexy Han Solo right after I told you that. And then you sent me a picture and I can't stop looking at it. But it doesn't have anything to do with the Han Solo-ness.
Yeah, we were trying
And
to
so
figure
I'm
out what the-
fascinated by the idea of like it's mashing together two things that I love.
Well, I'll describe the picture to people. There's a really hot girl in it, which I think is the sexy part. And then she's actually wearing an incredibly good Han Solo costume that also happens to be a sexy costume.
She
So
has a
it's
vest, like the iconic leather belt with the sort of diagonal
It's really-
holster thing. She has an
it's
accurate
adapted
blaster.
to be like what a female Han Solo would look like in like a sexy comic book.
Underneath the vest is a corset, and then she has a short skirt on that mimics the blue,
Pants.
navy blue with a red stripe.
Yeah, his military red stripe pants. And
Yeah.
the blaster, as we noticed, is identical. So just
Pretty
spot on,
close.
Spot on.
Close.
I would say as identical as your memory can tell.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you don't need to say pretty
Absolutely.
close. You
Absolutely.
jerk.
No, I've watched replica videos on how to
Wow.
build one of those because I think it's cool as
Maybe
shit.
jerk's not the right word. What happened? Did you just stub your toe?
No, I just said the S word.
Oh, you did. I couldn't even hear it. I'm such a profane jerk that I don't even hear these words when they come out of your mouth. Yes, we're even now.
1-1.
Which one did I say?
But so the thing, I don't remember.
I think I said.
I think you said the F word. Yeah,
whole different. Damn
which
it.
is apparently
Ah.
worse. I don't. It's whatever. But so I was just. It was curious because I thought like it is certainly a sexually attractive image, but I don't think it has anything to do with the Han Solo-ness.
Yeah, so that took us to a different type of uncomfortable line of thought, which is if you took the question was like, are we extra attracted to pictures of pretty girls dressed as like famous sci-fi characters because of the sci-fi characters? And at first we were like, absolutely, no way. Like, why? I don't care that she's dressed as Han Solo. She's just like a cute girl. And then
what if it was Slave Leia?
Right. What if it was Slave Leia? Or what if the character just had been female and she did all the cool stuff that Han Solo did? Then you would be attracted to her for the Han Solo stuff too. And so I think your brain is getting both things in there at once, and we just don't want to admit it.
Interesting. I wonder how much of it. So, like, you're talking about sort of this transference of sort of a nostalgic, or I guess not even nostalgic, but character elements, right?
A transference of like the stuff that's harder to say you're attracted to. It's easy to say you're attracted to like a physically fit
What about the
woman.
Fetish side? Like, what if you were not attracted to anyone not dressed as Han Solo?
You just put that in a really good way. I just really liked it. You're just not attractive, not attractive, not attractive. Ooh, you're just like Han Solo.
There it is.
Very attractive.
Go to the sexy Han Solo convention.
I don't experience really like visceral or obvious fetishes like that. I was gonna say I don't have fetishes, but that's probably not true. I haven't developed yet that I know of really explicit fetishes like that. So I don't connect with that. When people say they have like weird fetishes on the internet and stuff, that weirds me out. Like, I certainly think cute Han Solo chicks are cool. That's like a cool picture. That's like fun, cool costume, hot girl, you know. But
right.
I don't know about that. Only attracted to people dressed as Han Solo.
Right, but it's funny because it's like rule whatever of the internet, right? Like, if you can think of a thing, it's been sexualized on the internet,
right? And
it's like, hey, whatever your thing is. But when people say like, well, what are you into? My answer is usually just like nothing exciting, like standard, boring.
Maybe we should check with other people. What are our listeners into?
Right.
Are you guys weirdos? Are you guys into like chicks dressed as Han Solo, or Chewbacca, who also came up when you search for sexy Han Solo, or like a little kid?
But let's talk about it in this context. Why is the whole conversation about? I feel super uncomfortable talking about this right now. Why? Like, why does it matter what I'm into and whether that's acceptable or not? Like, because on some, there's some spaces where I can see that, because if what you're into is potentially not sanitary, I can see the reason that it would be like, well, yeah, we don't need people getting parasites. But like, then we judge them. We judge them on why is it more uncomfortable for me to talk about? Why do I feel just fine right now saying the phrase pooping on people's chest when I don't feel comfortable using the F word? Like, why is it not okay for me to say the F word?
But to make people think about someone squatting over them and taking a dump on their chest. But I didn't use any
offensive words when I said pooping on someone's chest.
You used a funny word.
You say poopy to little kids.
Oh, look at your poopy. It's all over me. Babies poop on people's chests all the time. They throw up on them. They pee on them.
And so anyway, it's like that makes sense as a thing that you go, ew. But that's because if you get, like, we are by instinct, dogs stay away from poop. I mean, they give it a sniff, but then they walk away.
Don't cats eat dogs' poop, though?
That's different, though, because I think that's a matter of...
And don't dogs eat cats' poop?
Dogs eat horse poop, but that has to do with what they process. Bigger animals?
Do we eat horse poop?
I don't know if
do horses eat elephant poop?
But that's how you get cholera. So isn't poopy water how you get cholera? Anyway,
probably.
The aversion to that behavior makes sense, whether you want to call it instinct or social, whatever. Right. But there are diseases you get by having poop in your food. So that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And I've still not used any offensive words to talk about that, but I would feel equally I would feel more uncomfortable having this conversation at a Starbucks with a person that I'd only known for a week than I would saying the F word.
Well, you've taken it to the poop place, which is where you take every podcast.
Because it's a
Back
funny
to-
place to make people really uncomfortable without saying anything actually offensive.
What
in a
does this have
space
to do
where it
with it?
really shouldn't be uncomfortable. Because everyone poops. It's the same reason sex shouldn't be uncomfortable. Like, if you exist, sex happened to make you.
If you exist,
Sorry.
sex happens. That's a good shirt for the shirt site. If you exist, sex happened. That's a really good shirt. Write that down.
We could put some deal with it sunglasses on it.
Deal with it. Totally. Deal with it. Sunglasses. We don't even need to use the words. So I think these Sexy Han Solo was a good intro for us to get our feet wet in a topic that is really important: human sexuality, male female double standards. An area that I think we talk about a lot, actually, privately, but often don't talk about publicly. And I think it's a great place to go with some future podcasts. This is an uncomfortable topic because it's very touchy. You know, it's very emotional. It affects people's lives greatly. Like sexuality, it affects people's lives in really, really good ways, in really, really horrible ways, especially with the male-female dichotomy. And that's what comes up. That is a deeply important topic to be discussed and to be figured out. And the conversation needs to be had, and we're just two of the men to maybe have that conversation someday when we feel more comfortable.
Someday when we feel more comfortable. Well, what I was going to say was pretty much exactly the same thing, which is just like the conversation that I think this begs, or the question that I keep wanting to ask, but we're almost out of time, is like, so does sexy Han Solo does it work the other way around? Like when I wear a sexy Han Solo outfit, am I more attractive to women?
Are you
or
wearing
is
the mini skirt or the pants?
And so what I brought up when we were talking about it was not literally the same outfit. That I would just be hanging out the bottom of a skirt that small.
I would guess that almost the entire world's female population would find you more sexy in a Han Solo costume.
Right. I think that's fair.
It's just not. It's different. Well, this will get us into that topic, and I'd love to, but it'll just be different because all of your skin won't be showing. And for some reason, I mean, we can get into those reasons, but for some reason that's different and worse and objectifying. You might have to wear a tight shirt to show off your muscles and stuff or something. I don't know. You've got to endanger yourself. They're like opposite, there are other things that make it equally potentially difficult.
And I think
or
that's
bad.
why it's another
I'm feeling
podcast,
weird
is because
let's save it.
anyway, I feel like we're about to accidentally start the 3-hour podcast that conversation needs to be.
I feel like it's important at this point that I apologize to our listeners for cheating for the second half of the podcast and using letters as proxies for the cuss words that I wanted to use, because I think I did it too much and I feel bad now. So I meant to do this without.
I have to say that there
and I did
are a number of podcasts that I listen to, and I particularly admire Adam Savage's ability to do this. He really, I think, aggressively tries not to use profanity, even though it slips here and there. And I mean, he's like, it's Mythbusters, and there's a level of Mr. Wizard accessibility to everything that he does, and I think that's important because you do teach your kids. You don't want to alienate a chunk of your possible, people you could possibly teach and people you could possibly involve in the conversation because you're using profanity.
Right.
But then I also don't want to not talk about sexuality. And so is that going to alienate the same population? And then does it even matter? And why is there a difference? And
I think
this is the stuff I want to talk about on the podcast.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think this is good. This is a
Welcome
great
to
step
the
in-
Reels Engineering podcast.
Welcome to Adam and Brian's psychotherapy with each other podcast, where we deal with our own personal issues in a public setting to force ourselves to be more comfortable when we're socializing with others.
We should just rename the podcast. Am I an asshole?
You didn't like the name I just gave it?
Anyway, thanks for hanging out, everybody.
I've had a really effing good time. I
Yeah,
hope
it was-
everyone else has too.
Same deal. Find us on socials. Don't miss a podcast. Rate and review on iTunes. That ass helps.
But a couple jerks.
What a couple jerks. I'm Adam.
Brian, I hope you have a super enlightened day, void of things that are profane and make you seem like a J, even though you are a huge J, a huge F and J.
What a jerk.
Get out of here.
They don't know what I know.
butts, boobs,
Butts. I like butts and boobs.
typical dude things. Like I got to take down this picture of sexy Han Solo. It keeps distracting me.